Welcome back to Football Daily. Now, with transfer deadline day fast approaching, we've put together a team of the best last-minute buys. United and Spurs, take note. Goalkeeper, Hugo Lloris. We kick things off at White Hart Lane, which has seen a fair amount of astute business over the years. And on the 31st of August 2012, Spurs made one of their most important signings. Lyon goalkeeper Hugo Lloris may have only been 25 at the time, but he had already been a number one in Ligue 1 for 6 seasons and had established himself as France captain. The deal also involved the coming together of two of football's most difficult businessmen, Daniel Levy and Jean-Michel Aulas, and the Lyon owner named Levy as the toughest negotiator he had faced in his 25 years in the game. Either way, the initial fee of £7.9 million represents great value in hindsight. Only Danny Rose, Jan Vertonghen and Moussa Dembele have held down their place in the Spurs team for as long as Lloris, and in 2015, the Frenchman was named as permanent club captain by manager Pochettino. Since then, the club have recorded 3 consecutive top 3 finishes for the first time since the 1960s. Clearly, Aulas should have held out for a higher fee. Defender David Luiz. One of modern football's most polarising defenders, David Luiz was a love-hate figure during his first stint at Chelsea. So when they sold him to PSG for a record £50 million in 2014, more than a few eyebrows were raised while the Blues recorded a near £30 million profit. But on deadline day 2 years later, the unthinkable happened. Chelsea, with a new manager in charge, opted to buy back the man who had been considered surplus to requirements by Jose Mourinho. Luiz arrived back in London for £35 million and was an unlikely success story, slotting into Antonio Conte's 3-man defence with ease. Sideshow Bob instantly became one of the main men at Stamford Bridge, and after being chastised by much of the English media for years, silenced the doubters as Chelsea romped to a 5th Premier League title. Defender John Stones. The biggest story of the January deadline in 2013 was David Beckham's free transfer to PSG. But while the world's most marketable footballer was swapping the glamour of LA for the romance of Paris, a young unknown centre-back was making the 75-mile journey from Barnsley to Liverpool. John Stones was just 18 at the time and had made a total of 28 senior appearances, but amid interest from the likes of Chelsea and Man City, Everton took a £3 million punt on the promising defender. While he didn't start for the Toffees for nearly an entire year, once he did establish himself in the side, he was practically undroppable, and by the end of 2014 had been nominated for the Golden Boy Award. Come the following summer, Stones came under Chelsea's spotlight once again, but Everton rejected a £38 million bid, holding out for another 12 months before the lure of Pep at City became too much. When the Barnsley boy eventually moved to the Etihad, he became the second most expensive defender in history at the age of 22. Not only did Everton receive a record fee for the player they had invested in just 3 years earlier, but Barnsley also made another £7 million from the deal, so everyone was a winner. Defender Eric Bailly. Completing our defence is Man United's Eric Bailly, and while he was snapped up by the Red Devils early in summer 2016, Villarreal captured him on the final day of the January window just 15 months earlier. The Ivorian centre-back joined the Yellow Submarine from La Liga rivals Espanyol as a replacement for the outgoing Gabriel Paulista, and he quickly marked himself out as one of Europe's most exciting young defenders. Bailly's no-nonsense approach and ability to play out from the back helped the club record a top 4 finish the following season, and Old Trafford came calling. Villarreal collected €38 million for the 22-year-old, meaning they made over 6 times the amount they paid for the youngster less than 2 years earlier. Originally a last-minute replacement, Bailly turned out to be an incredibly lucrative investment.
If you've been enjoying this XI, why not check out The 12th Man, where we give you all the tips and tricks to beat your friends at fantasy football. Click the I to do so.
Midfielder Claude Makll. The summer of 2003 was one of the hottest in English history, and it also changed the country's footballing landscape forever, as Roman Abramovich's takeover at Chelsea saw the club embark on a spending spree never seen before in the sport. The Blues' ridiculously swift and extensive business included nabbing Hernan Crespo from Inter Milan, Juan Sebastian Veron from Man United, and Joe Cole from West Ham. But they left their best deal until the very last minute, bringing in Claude Makll from Real Madrid for £16 million. The 30-year-old Frenchman offered nothing in terms of resale value, but later became the defining player of Jose Mourinho's legendary first 2 seasons at Stamford Bridge, in which the club tripled their tally of English League titles while conceding less than a goal every 2 games. His sweep-up position in front of the Chelsea defence even came to be known as the Makll role, etching his name into the country's footballing culture forever and setting the benchmark for defensive mids in the Premier League. Midfielder Xavier Mascherano. While the club who actually snapped him up may not have benefited an awful lot from his acquisition, Xavier Mascherano's arrival at West Ham on deadline day 2006 presented a gift to European football. Not too long after his controversial move to East London, the 22-year-old was allowed to join Liverpool, this time after the winter deadline, and he quickly formed a mouth-watering trio with Xabi Alonso and Steven Gerrard in the Reds midfield. After coming close to pipping Ferguson's Man United to the title in 2009, a vintage Liverpool side began to disintegrate, and Mascherano jumped ship just as Roy Hodgson entered the fray. And once at Barcelona, one of the most gifted DMs of his generation finally won the silverware he deserved, picking up 16 trophies in his 7.5 seasons at the Camp Nou. Midfielder Mikkel Arteta. Probably the most worthy member of this team, Mikkel Arteta was the subject of not one but two deadline day transfers, and both turned out to be huge successes. The Basque midfielder was originally brought to the Premier League by David Moyes, who sealed a loan deal for him on the final day of the January window in 2005. Then 22, Arteta had already turned out for Barcelona B, PSG, Rangers and Real Sociedad, but his arrival at Everton marked the start of a long period of stability. He quickly became a fan favourite at Goodison Park, winning Player of the Season in his first 2 full campaigns with the club, and ended up spending 6.5 years on Merseyside. Then in 2011, Arteta became the centrepiece of one of the biggest ever panic sprees, as Arsenal brought in 4 players in 2 days following their infamous 8-2 defeat to Man United. But it turned out to be a very intelligent signing. Originally brought in to help mask the loss of Cesc Fabregas, Arteta eventually settled into a more defensive role and became club captain 3 years later. In fact, he was so well regarded at the club that even after leaving to become Pep's right-hand man at City, Arteta was seriously considered as Arsene Wenger's replacement in North London. Midfielder Mesut Ozil. But Arsenal's greatest piece of last-minute business came in 2013, when Germany's creative wizard Mesut Ozil showed up at the Emirates. It came at the end of another frustrating window for the Gunners, in which deals for Luis Suarez and Gonzalo Higuain fell through, and the return of a 29-year-old Mathieu Flamini was big news. But as the window drew to a close, Wenger finally stumped up the kind of fee Arsenal fans had been craving, £42.4 million to be exact, to bring in a world-class player in his prime. The German international had directly contributed to a whopping 74 goals in 105 league appearances for Real Madrid, marking out his place as Europe's assist king. And at the Emirates, he has been similarly imperious, having been involved in a goal every 150 minutes. While he hasn't been able to help deliver that all-elusive Premier League title, Ozil has brought some much-needed class to an otherwise uninspired era in the club's modern history. Forward Gareth Bale. But Mesut Ozil's move to Arsenal would have likely been impossible had one man not left North London that summer. Although Tottenham had been preparing for the loss of Gareth Bale all year, the world record deal was not wrapped up until the very end of the window, largely due to the stubbornness of Daniel Levy. Bale arrived at the Bernabeu for around €100 million, eclipsing the fee dished out for Cristiano Ronaldo 4 years earlier. But the Welshman entered the Spanish capital with full knowledge that he was no longer the main man. However, he didn't succumb to the fate of Kaká before him, and in his first season proved himself as a big game player, scoring a stunning solo winner in the Copa del Rey final against Barcelona, before grabbing the decisive goal in the Champions League final against Atleti just 1 month later. While injuries and Zidane's rotation system threatened to derail his career in Madrid, Bale popped up on the biggest stage once again in 2018, scoring one of the all-time great Champions League goals to defeat Liverpool in Kiev, before taking the opportunity to voice his opinion after the game. And he got his wish. Ronaldo was sold to Juventus, and at the time of recording, Bale is poised to become the focal point of the Real attack. Forward, Wayne Rooney. For all of Chelsea's dominance in the transfer markets in the mid-2000s, there was one major signing that got away. After announcing himself as the world's most exciting teenager at Euro 2004, Wayne Rooney quickly appeared at the top of many clubs' shopping lists, namely that of the Blues, Newcastle and Man United. However, Old Trafford always seemed to be the youngster's most likely destination, and Alex Ferguson finally got his man just hours before the window closed. On signing, the manager announced Rooney as the best young player this country has seen in 30 years, and the 18-year-old duly lived up to the hype, netting a hat-trick on his debut in the Champions League. And we all know the rest. Rooney went on to win 5 league titles, 4 domestic cups and a Champions League with the Red Devils and stayed at the club for 13 years. Not bad for £30 million. Forward, Kylian Mbappe. Another transfer which looks like incredibly good business in hindsight is that of Kylian Mbappe, and at the time of recording, it hasn't even been a year. On deadline day 2017, you would have been forgiven for thinking PSG were all done in the transfer market, given their £200 million outlay on Neymar. But Les Parisiens decided to troll the football world further by snapping up its hottest young prospect. Mbappe had come off the back of a rollercoaster 6 months in which he'd helped to fire Monaco to the Ligue 1 title and a Champions League semi-final, and an initial loan deal was struck as a precursor to an eventual €180 million deal. While that is a very hefty sum, Mbappe's achievements since have made it look like a very well-timed investment. At just 19, he has already scored 48 goals in 104 senior club appearances and contributed to 5 goals in 7 matches as France won the World Cup. He is now officially valued at $190 million, but with that bigger profile, he is a priceless asset for PSG.
So thanks once again for watching, guys, and if you enjoyed this, why not click on screen right now for another one of our fantastic videos. And as always, guys, don't forget to like and subscribe.